welcome to another episode of the Wanderlust Wealth Show. And so today is going to be a very different podcast episode because I am just going to be honestly talking very frankly about the things that I'm actually struggling with right now, both what I'm struggling with and how I am getting through it. Because here's the thing, a lot of big shot real estate investors or entrepreneurs, what they don't tell you and show you a lot of the time are the things that they're actually struggling through. Like a lot of the time, they'll post about when they actually made it, right? When they got the thing, when they accomplished the thing, they got the big hotel or they got the properties or they launched the business and made $500,000 in one launch. They show their highlights and it's so normal. That's what us humans do. And especially with social media, that is just what we do. We show our highlights in life. But the thing is that every single person out there, no matter how big or how small they are working through just like regular everyday struggles that everyone else is. And there's usually something that they're working through that's like preventing them from actually hitting their goals. And it's so hard a lot of the time to talk through that because we want to show that we like have our stuff together, have our shit together, right? And especially when we're like posting things on social media, right? Like we want to show people how to do the thing. And a lot of the time we don't post the things that we're actually struggling through because that's not what we think people actually want to hear about. Whenever I'm planning out content, I'm like, okay, people want to know how to get the property, what locations to invest in, et cetera, et cetera. So you just kind of craft a lot of your content around that. But honestly, something that I really appreciate is seeing the humps and hurdles that other people are going through, just like so that I know that I'm not alone in this, right? And because I know it helps other people give themselves more grace too. And like, even though my whole like vibe and energy and platform is about inspiring others and uplifting their spirits and showing them how they can do anything that they want to do and showing them how to get over these humps. But the thing is, we are all human. And at different levels, there are going to be different things that we're going to be struggling through. Like, just because you hit a certain phase, it doesn't mean that all of your problems are suddenly gone away and you can figure every single thing out in a drop of a hat, no problem, right? Each stage of life comes with its own battles, comes with its own challenges, comes with its own struggles, and that's honestly just the beauty of life, okay? But here is the difference I do see between people who are quote unquote successful, right? And those who are just kind of stuck and ruminating over the same thing over and over and over and over again. And the people who are successful generally know that it's just a season and it's okay to not have it all figured out. It's all about just taking consistent action to help them get unstuck, to help them keep moving, because eventually there is that thing that is going to show up and suddenly it's all unstuck and everything works out. And it's like, wow, this overnight success, right? But really, it's been weeks or months or years sometimes of working on the same thing over and over again, just getting a little bit unstuck each time. I think of it kind of like getting out of a really tight parking like situation, like a parallel parking situation, right? So at first you're making just tiny little steps, like a little bit forward, a little bit backwards, a little bit forwards, a little bit backwards, moving and inching your way out of this space until finally you get just enough radius where you can make that big turn and swoop on out and you're out of the parking space. So it's kind of the same thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to real estate investing, when it comes to life. But okay. So what am I actually struggling with right now? So if you have been following along on the podcast or on Instagram, social media, you know that I recently just moved to Colorado. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit chaotic. Like I just picked up and left and just packed up all my stuff and really didn't think too much about it and just went. And while it was chaotic, it was honestly probably the single best decision that I've made this year, other than like hiring my VA and hiring Anita. Like, hands down, this was so freaking great. And I'm so lit up about it. And I'm even joining like this bougie entrepreneurial membership club. And I feel like I'm surrounding myself with more and more people and having like my people in my corner, which is really awesome. Now, we're not going to get too in the weeds about the Bougie Entrepreneurial Club. Maybe I'll make a whole podcast episode about that later. But so moved to Colorado, freaking phenomenal. However, right now, I don't have a home. So the funny thing is I'm actually in New Orleans right now. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you may be familiar with my backdrop. I'm in my house in New Orleans just because I'm here for a wedding and I'm like closing out a few more things here before I like head out to Colorado. The funny thing is that this house in New Orleans feels like home. Like it's so nice to have my couch, my bed, like everything, like it feels like home. I've been living here for the last 2 or so years, 3 years almost. So it really does feel like home. While New Orleans as a city and Louisiana, the South, doesn't feel like home, but my house here does. But in Denver, I've basically been Airbnb hopping, doing home exchanges, like hopping around at least sometimes every few days, sometimes every couple of weeks. I have a little bit of a longer stay in June, but I have like everything in my car and haven't fully unpacked yet, like because I just keep bumping around and I'm trying to find a place to buy. But I also know because of my current situation, it might take me a little bit longer to actually find a home that works versus if I were buying it conventionally, I know that I could find something super, super quickly. But essentially, since I'm a full time entrepreneur, but I don't have 2 years worth of tax returns yet from my business, I just won't be able to qualify for a loan until next year. But I am literally determined to buy a freaking house this year. And I kind of have to go the creative financing method, or I can potentially get like a family member to co sign with me. But either way, right now, I by myself cannot get a regular loan. And so I'm open to seeing what different creative ways I can actually help finance this purchase because it's also going to stretch me because I haven't done any like particularly crazy creative financing deals that don't involve regular loan. So I'm like, oh, this is a fun stretch for me so that I can also then go ahead and teach that to my students on how to do creative financing and things like that. Okay, so I just got back from Nicaragua, truly living that freedom lifestyle that I always talk about. Left my computer at home, put my phone on do not disturb. And the best part about it was that my real estate was running in the background, still bringing me income without me having to lift a finger. And it was blissful. And when I got back, I was just like, more people need to set this up for their lives for freedom. Okay. And so I haven't done this in a little bit, but I am going to be hosting a free masterclass on June 25th on how to get started investing in real estate in 2024. Because y'all, it is halfway through the year. And so many of you have told me that your goal was to buy real estate in 2024 and you still haven't done it. So let's change that, okay? And take you from burnt out corporate employee or burnt out business owner to actually bringing in passive income and having that freedom lifestyle. So come to my masterclass on June 25th. It is totally free. You can either find the link in the show notes or DM me the words free class. So like FREECLASS, like separate free class on Instagram, and we will get you all signed up. See you on June 25th. As I was saying, I know it's a little bit harder to go the creative financing route. Like, it's not like every property out there on the market will want to do creative financing. I've had a few leads, gotten into some conversations, we're working it, we're making it work, but it does take a little bit longer. And I know that, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And if you didn't know my buying criteria, basically I'm trying to house hack a property in Denver, something where I can do separate entrances just because I have my dog and I personally just want my own space. I've lived in my own space for the last many, many, many years and just like having my own space. It just is what it is. And I also know that there is a property that is coming up that will work perfectly for me in the area of town that I want to be in. I just have to be a little bit patient. And it was honestly a similar thing when I was buying my property in New Orleans years ago. Like, I knew that I was going to be buying a property that year. No, it didn't manifest within the first like month of searching, right? It took a little bit of time. It took a little bit longer than I was hoping it would originally, but I also knew it was going to happen. And so I was okay with waiting for the right property for me versus just like running into something that really wasn't something that I actually wanted to buy. But yeah, so basically for the last month and a half, I've just been bopping around to Airbnbs and home exchanges. And I'm actually going to be doing a podcast episode about home exchanges because honestly, this has been such a freaking game changer. And this is why we purchase real estate because it gives you more options, not less, especially when you're traveling. And that's going to be a great podcast episode. So make sure you actually like follow the podcast or subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss that episode. It's going to be fire. But overall, I just don't really feel settled right now. It's a little bit exhausting. I pretty much spent the last year and a half, almost 2 years on the road and on planes. And don't get me wrong, I love to travel, but I've moved around so freaking much my entire life. And I've traveled so much and I love traveling, but I'm just so excited to actually call somewhere home for a while. Like, longer than a while. Like, I could see Colorado being home for me, like my home base for like 10 plus years, with also a home base in Italy. But like, that's all so freaking wild for me because if you know me, like everywhere kind of feels like home and nowhere feels like home at the same time. But Colorado is one of the few places where I'm like, I genuinely believe that this can be home. And it's so funny because like one of the big issues I have with Denver and Colorado is it's like extremely white. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. But I've just lived in places where I've seen a lot of diversity, right? Like used to live in London. I lived in Brazil. I've lived in Houston. Even living here in New Orleans, there's a lot of diversity. Not a ton of diversity in Denver. That's okay. But here's the funny thing, and this is where I know like I'm on the right track, is because the like, bougie entrepreneurship membership club that I was telling you guys about before, that place is geared towards being diverse. And there's a lot of people of different backgrounds and ethnicities that are a part of this club. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are the odds here in Denver? And this is where the universe is really just like telling me, like, we're on the right track. Just keep going. We're on the right track. But yes, so right now, I don't have a home, feeling very unsettled. And I'm at this point where it's like, okay, I can't keep bouncing around to these Airbnbs and home exchanges for much longer. Like, I'm literally exhausted. I want to unpack my car. I want a home base. So I'm like, okay, do I go and just like get a rental at an apartment complex for a little? I actually stayed at an Airbnb that was in this apartment complex type of thing. And I realized that is not what I want. I'm kind of done with apartment complexes. I did them between the ages of 17 and like 26 ish. And I'm tired. I don't want them. I like living in a home, something that actually feels like a home, something that does have an outdoor space. That is what I want. I don't want to be in a big box apartment complex. And the funny thing is, I'm so glad I did move to Denver when I did, because the part of town that I originally thought that I wanted to be in, I was like, actually, I don't want to be here. I want to be in this other part of town and hang around more people that I want to be around. And so this is where I just know that each step that I'm making is truly getting me closer and closer to finding that right property, to finding that right space. Even though right now I'm kind of in this bit of a messy middle, right? Where I just feel a little bit unsettled. That is oh freaking K. Okay. Because I see myself and I feel myself getting clearer and clearer about what I actually want versus just rushing into something that I know is actually not going to be right. But yeah, so right now I'm looking at creative financing options, like even a rent to own type of situation, right? Because if I do a rent to own situation, I could potentially get into a property and not have to move. Because if it turns into a property that I can actually purchase, then that's a great way for me to stay stable and not feel like, oh my gosh, well, I'm going to move into this one place and I have to move out in a month or two. So this is where we like really have to start getting creative. And even though things aren't perfectly aligning right now, how can we make this work for us? How can we set ourselves up so in the future we have taken the right steps to get us to where we actually need to go? But I just wanted to talk about this right now because I'm really just like in the thick of it, feeling these emotions hard. And it's okay to really not have it all figured out right away. I don't have it all figured out. I also know, I literally know to my core that it's all going to work itself out here soon. But I also know that right now I'm in this slightly confusing middle period, that middle section where I'm kind of floundering a little bit, and that's a-okay because I'm going to look back in 3 to 6 months and be like, wow, remember that time where you're floundering? Look at you now. It's really all just a part of the process. So, in times where things are uncertain and you don't have it all figured out, these are like the two things I personally just like to do when I don't have it all figured out and I feel like I'm spiraling. Okay. So, number one is actually getaway. I just got back from Nicaragua and I just got away and didn't think about it. I didn't think about anything. I literally took proper vacation. Didn't bring my laptop, didn't bring my anything. I'm going to do a whole podcast episode about that too. But like, I just got away. I didn't look at properties. I did nothing business wise. I turned my brain freaking off and I just let it breathe, let it digest, let myself get distracted versus going around in circles and freaking out. Because What we really need to learn how to do is, if we want to do cool stuff in life, we have to learn how to regulate our nervous system. We have to learn how to detach and let our brain relax and let the universe just do its freaking thing. Because sometimes we like to grip onto our goals so freaking tight, and it just completely suffocates them and it prevents them from actually happening. So just get away, remove yourself, go do something fun, be silly, and then come back to it later. Now, the second thing that I really, really, really like to do, and I think it's so important, is to actually take small, inspired actions forward. When you get back from, let's say you did take that break that I said, actually take small actions forward, right? I came up with this rent to own idea actually while I was in Nicaragua, and I wasn't thinking about it. And then it just popped into my brain. And then I started looking at properties and I was like, oh, wait, this is actually a viable option. And it's in a location that I preferred even more so than places that were actually listed on the market. And I'm like, okay, we're making moves. We're going in the right direction. So I started reaching out to real estate agents who actually had leasing options and not properties to buy. And now I'm looking at even more different options that is just like a completely different strategy, right, than what I'd originally considered. So it's okay to not have it all figured out, okay? It is so okay. You just need to continue taking small actions forward and like slowly getting yourself unstuck, kind of like we were talking about in the parallel parking situation, right? Because eventually there is going to be that switch, that something that clicks so that you can swoop on out and it all figures itself out. Now, I know this episode was a little messier and all over the place than some of my other ones, but I just hope that you know that we are literally all just human and we're trying to figure it out one step at a time. I'm not going to pretend that I have every single thing figured out and that I don't spiral on occasion, right? Sometimes we do have that messy middle, but it's okay. And it's all a part of the process. And we're going to keep going. And life doesn't have to feel like you have to strangle all of your goals to make them happen. They're going to happen. You just have to keep the faith. You just have to keep taking action. You just have to keep moving a little bit further in the right direction. And it's all going to work itself out. Okay, well, I love you guys. If you like this episode, please post it on the socials. Let me know what you think. Tag me, send me a DM. Just let me know, because I don't know which of these episodes you actually like, what you don't like, unless you tell me. Thank you to everyone who has left a review. You guys are the real MVPs, like truly the real MVPs. I appreciate you. Adios, fam. Thank you so much for listening to Wanderlust Wealth Show. Now, don't forget to follow the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you love this episode, it would literally mean the world to me if you shared this with a friend or a family member, or literally like anyone off of the street. Like right now, go ahead, share it so you don't forget, or post it on social media and make sure to tag me. I love seeing what you're listening in on and what you resonated with, and I'm just so freaking thankful for you. I'm so freaking excited for you. I love you, and don't forget, life really doesn't have to be hard.